Slasher Kart for the Nintendo 64 is... Slasher Kart... Aw, jeez. Are we doing this again? Didn't we get in trouble for this last time? Sorry? This time is different? And we're getting paid again, so I should just shut my mouth and go with it? Well, alright then. This is Chris from Makopowered, and welcome to a special Geek Guilt sponsored Halloween 64 edition of Weekend Rental. Before we get started, we should address that trouble I mentioned in the intro. So, back when I did the GoldenEye with Mario characters video for Geek Guilt, I made sure to mention the modders responsible for the game. Well, those modders actually found the video, which I honestly wasn't expecting. The thing is, they weren't happy about it, and I understand why. To be clear, they didn't take issue with the video as such. In fact, they thought that the critiques were valid and appreciated the recognition of their work. No, the problem they had was with the physical cartridges of their work that Geek Guilt was offering for sale. It turns out that their ROM hack of GoldenEye was taken and flashed onto these carts without their permission. In other words, not only were they not asked if the ROM they made could be used, they were also not being compensated for the sale of these carts. On top of that, the version of the ROM hack being used was outdated by the time of the video, which means that a bunch of my critiques had already been addressed. This was not Geek Guilt's fault, however. They had received the carts from their supplier and were under the impression that they had been signed off on by the modders and that everything was above board. After some hastily arranged communication between Geek Guilt and Grazlu00, who is representing the mod team, we were all able to come to an amicable agreement about the remaining copies and an agreement not to stock any more of these unauthorized carts. That's why this time is different. Geek Guilt has been working on their own Mario Kart mod for the past year. This is wholly their work, which they are flashing to N64 carts and offering on their site. There are no concerns about absent permissions or suppliers or anything like that, because this has been done entirely in-house. Because of that, they reached out to me again to give their work the weekend rental treatment. So yes, once again, this video is sponsored. No, that does not mean it will affect my opinion. Geek Guilt keeps reaching out because they want my unfiltered view of these games, and I am happy to do so. Full disclosure, at the time I was recording gameplay footage, the cartridges had not been finalized yet, so I am playing a final pre-release version of the ROM on Project 64 using a USB N64 controller. The actual carts should be available either by the time this video is uploaded or shortly thereafter. Okay, with that out of the way, let's talk about Slasher Kart for the N64. Since this is a ROM hack, at its core it is still Mario Kart 64. The track layouts haven't been changed, the driver attributes are the same, there are no added courses. This looks like it's going to be a short video. Or at least it would be if there weren't some very clever approaches to the subject material, which, as a horror movie scholar and fan, had me marking out. For one, we need to talk about the framing for the game, because it's kinda brilliant, and actually addresses one of the key issues with Mario Kart as a franchise. With any iteration of Mario Kart, the question always remains: why are Mario, Luigi, Peach, and friends go-kart racing with Bowser, Wario, a Koopa, and so on? The typical answer tends to be, don't worry about it. There really is no reason they would get along well enough to do something like this, even with the addition of the weapons and items. Well, Slasher Kart actually gives a reason, albeit a slightly implicit one. See, the game is hosted by Jigsaw from the Saw movies. He is the one who tells the player to pick a character, select a cup, and even has his puppet take the place of Lakitu, counting down the start of each race and fishing the player out of pits. Okay, that seems innocuous enough, it's just in keeping with the theming, right? What's the big deal? The big deal is that, in going with Jigsaw as MC of the experience, it transforms the very nature of the game. These racers aren't here because they're just having fun on a Sunday at their local go-kart track. They are all trapped and forced to participate in Jigsaw's twisted game, a twisted game that takes the form of Mario Kart. Because of this, the characters here, the weapons they use, the cutthroat nature of the AI, all of it takes on a larger, more sinister significance because of Jigsaw's presence and implied manipulations. The fact that there was enough restraint shown that Jigsaw wasn't made one of the racers himself makes it even better. He's manipulating everyone without getting directly involved. Then there's the character assignment, or reassignment I guess. Again, because this is Mario Kart 64 at its core, there aren't any added racers, but which characters were assigned to which racer attributes bears discussing because some of the choices are inspired. I appreciate that Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger were given Mario and Luigi's slots and attributes. It makes sense considering these two have long been the standard bearers for the slasher genre, and the rivalry between the two matches up nicely with the rivalry between Mario and Luigi going back to 1983's Mario Brothers. It's also a nice touch that Regan from The Exorcist was given Peach's slot as the only female racer in the group, and that Chucky from Child's Play was given Toad's slot as he's the smallest of the racers. Finally, making Michael Myers a plotting juggernaut of a menace, Donkey Kong, is equally fitting. Which is actually also where I take issue with the character assignment. Considering their relative similarities, I would actually have given the heavy spots, Donkey Kong, Wario, and Bowser, to Jason, Michael Myers, and Leatherface. Yeah, I know I said that having Jason in the Mario slot works, given his relation to Freddy/Luigi, and it does. I'm just saying that Jason's nature may be more suited to, say, Bowser. Further, while I do get a kick out of the inclusion of both Scream's Ghostface and It's Pennywise, also props for going with the Tim Curry version, there's a reason he was originally supposed to play the Joker on Batman the Animated Series, I don't necessarily think of them as plotting heavyweights. Given the fact that Leatherface's lumbering movement and inability to control his momentum is literally how Sally manages to escape from him in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I do feel like Wario may have been a better fit than the Yoshi slot he was put into. On that note, let's go back to Regan for a moment. I understand why they went with her. The character is undeniably a horror icon, but she doesn't say slasher to me per se. Aside from Burke Dennings, Regan never actually killed anyone, and it's never really clear if she killed Burke either. If it were me, for Peach's slot, I would probably have gone with a deeper cut, like Angela from Sleepaway Camp, who Harmony Colangelo offers an intriguing defense for. Well, that, or go with another slasher icon in the form of Norman Bates. After all, a mother is a boy's best friend, right? Speaking of the characters, another touch I can appreciate is, well, them speaking. The sheer amount of audio included for them is fun and impressive. In addition to Jigsaw's hosting, there are multiple voice clips for each of the contestants, and considering some of the contestants, there are some fun workarounds. I say this because, remember, Jason and Michael Myers do not speak. Ever. Well, sort of. And that's why I appreciate the voice clips for Jason in particular. See, while the voice clips for Michael Myers are just Dr. Loomis talking about how sinister Myers is, Jason's voice clips are actually Jason. Or a version of him at any rate. Instead of going with Tommy Jarvis, which would have been totally understandable, Jason's voice clips are of Pamela Voorhees speaking as Jason at the end of the original Friday the 13th. It's a clever way of giving Jason a voice of sorts without breaking his character. Oh, and quick aside, if you think the voice clips are gonna pull punches because this is a Mario Kart game, don't. I was expecting the lines to be censored because they're pulling from R-rated movies, and then I heard the clips used for Regan, and that expectation went right out the window. They're censored here because of the YouTube algorithm, but trust me, they are clear as day in the game itself. There are other nice touches with the audio as well, like using the one clip from any of these characters which explicitly references Nintendo itself. Freddy shouting from the video game kill in Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. There are only two criticisms I have in regards to the voice clips. One, returning to Leatherface, I'm not sure why they use other people's quotes for him when he is not mute. In the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, he yells a fair amount. It's just that all of that yelling takes the form of incoherent screaming and pig calls. Considering the rest of the game, I don't think having that in there would be too out of place. The other is that, I don't know if it was just me, but you hear Pennywise's one clip far too frequently. Otherwise, the audio is fun, and the fact that the music cannot be changed, but the voice clips can, causes a juxtaposition which makes the former a little unsettling and creepy in a vague way that just works. This juxtaposition carries over to the courses as well. Again, the course layouts themselves have not been changed, and that's fine. The changes that are present are approached in some really fun ways though. The fact that Luigi's Raceway is now literally called Child's Play both gives Chucky a track to call his own, and calls out how simple and easy that track is. Koopa Troopa Beach becomes Crystal Lake, with what appears to be the piranha from, well, Piranha taking the place of the Cheep Cheeps. Wario Stadium becomes Elm Street, which totally works considering Freddy is definitely the egomaniac of the crew, so would absolutely have his face slapped everywhere. He also gets Bowser's Castle, which... okay, this might be a stretch, but hear me out. It works because of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, The Dream Warriors. In particular, when Freddy confronts Will, the Dungeons & Dragons player, he does so in a fantasy castle setting in keeping with Will's interests. So, yeah, I may be reading too much into it, but I'm gonna say it's a cool, deeper reference than one would expect. Having said that, there are a couple of things with the courses that I would have done differently to play into the theme even further. One of the cups has been renamed the Twin Cup after the twins from The Shining. So why isn't one of the snow levels the Overlook? Frappe Snowland even has the snow sculptures which, while not being able to be changed because the modding tools used wouldn't allow it, could easily have passed for the Overlook's topiary animals. As well, Michael Myers is here, so why isn't Haddonfield? Mario Raceway could easily have been a decent substitute for Myers' stomping grounds. Also, and this is just me, but I would have themed Toad's Turnpike after Maximum Overdrive. But I also totally get why they didn't. It's a, let's be nice and call it, divisive movie. There is one track where I'm on board with the change, but would have taken it a bit further. So, Moo Moo Farm has been changed to Sawyer Farms from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which, yeah, cool, that absolutely works. The thing I would change is what the Monty Moles were changed to. As is, they are all just Leatherface, who pops out of the ground to hamper the player. That's fun and all, but a bit disconcerting considering you're either racing against or playing as Leatherface at any given point. Again, this is just the horror fan in me, but I would have kept Moo Moo Farm as Sawyer Farms, but changed the Monty Moles to Nubbins Sawyer, the hitchhiker who was picked up at the beginning of the original movie. Considering he is the most associated with attacking vehicles, it would have been fun having him trying to stop the drivers while Leatherface looms in on them as an opponent. Speaking of those course touches, we do need to quickly talk about some of the other really fun ones. There are signs littered throughout the courses for Scream Cellular, Good Guy's Toy Store, Freddy's Better Mattresses, Leatherface's Meat Pies, and Jigsaw's Hardware. The balloons that carry additional power-ups are clearly sent by Pennywise. Rainbow Road, now named Blood Road, has the faces of the contestants interspersed among the Mario faces. Here, my same critique as in Dragon Ball Kart applies, where the Mario faces feel out of place, but at least I understand why they haven't been changed now. It turns out that some of those faces are tied to 3D assets for some reason, so it's extremely difficult to change them, so fair enough. As is, once again, the juxtaposition between slashers and Mario characters is suitably creepy, and kinda works. More so than it did in Dragon Ball Kart. Slasher Kart is a fun, fan-fueled take on Mario Kart 64. Sure, in the end, it's still just Mario Kart, but the detail thrown in, as well as the sheer absurdity of these distinctly non-family-friendly characters inserted into one of Nintendo's flagship franchises, make it a much-changed experience from the original game. This approach makes for a great Halloween party game, and more than makes for a good weekend rental.
I am the Knight. I am Batman!